Hello, church. Here we are in a brand new book, the book of Lamentations. To lament means to express grief or sorrow at how bad things are. And did you know, here's just a little nugget of information. In the Hebrew title for this book is based on the very first word in chapter 1 verse 1, 2 verse 1, and 4 verse 1. They all use the same word. In English, that word is how. That is actually the name that is used in Hebrew to describe this book. And what it means is it's emphasizing the suffering that Israel is under. And now we have this whole book that talks about how badly Israel is suffering. And when I read this book, I actually find it's not as sad as you might think it would be. I'll say it like that. Because I see some things through that. Now let me explain. At first it's going to get even a little bit worse yet, because here we have just again and again, it points out how bad Israel is suffering. And it gets worse because it says Israel is suffering at the hand of the Lord. Like, it seems to me that as we read through these two chapters today, every 2 or 3 verses, it just says again, oh, the Lord is doing this. The Lord is bringing this punishment. God is doing this to us. And he's making us experience that. It's always shifting it on the Lord. In fact, chapter 1 verse 5 will make that very clear. It says, the Lord has brought her grief. So you could say it is the Lord who's doing it, but you would not be accurate if you said it's the Lord's fault. But it is the Lord who's doing it. Because you can see who's at fault in that same verse. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Now, when you realize it's actually the sin that's at fault, not the Lord, although the Lord is doing it. So you can see that it's her sin at fault if you look at chapter 1, verse 8, and verse 14, verse 18, verse 20, verse 22. And so you can see it's repeated many times that it is the sin that is at fault here, not the Lord, although the Lord is inflicting it. But this actually is not presenting an attack on God's character in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. Because if you look at chapter 2, verse 17, it says that the Lord has only done what he said he was going to do. He has fulfilled his word. If you think for hundreds of years, the Israelites have had God's written word. They had the law. And in the law is Deuteronomy chapter 28. That says, it calls out the blessings that will come for obedience and the curses that will come from disobedience. And listed in the curses for disobedience is verse 64 to 68. That says exactly what is happening to these Israelite people will happen if the people persist in disobedience. And so then you realize that God is literally only fulfilling what he said he would do. In fact, if he didn't bring justice at this time or judgment at this time, he would actually be going against his own character, and then his character would be in question. But because of their sin, he is actually only proving his character right by bringing about the consequence. Sheila and I learned how to apply this principle practically in our lives. In parenting, it took us a while to get there, but even when our kids were young, we started applying this. We would meet with our kids in a time when nobody had just disobeyed or anything. We're all on very good terms, not in the heat of the moment. We would talk with our kids about what our expectations were for them and lay them out simply, even talk to them about the consequence, what the consequence would be if they disobeyed and so on. And it was a very cheerful conversation. We put it in writing in very simple, plain, understand English, posted it on the side of our fridge. They could see it whenever they want. That really transformed our parenting, because then at some time later, when there was an infraction, we just simply had to carry out and enforce what we had agreed to do. In fact, we would have not felt like we were being bad parents to discipline. We would have felt like we were being bad parents if we hadn't disciplined, because we simply were carrying out what we has collectively agreed and made clear. That is what God's doing in here. And so we could already pray from that place and say, Jesus, have I ever inadvertently attacked your character when it was my sin that was at fault? Great thing to think about with the Lord. And then I just want to point out a quick thing about this. Another thing that I love about the book of Lamentations is that while many things are going bad and there's many reasons to have woe or lament, look at what they are doing. They are still petitioning God in prayer. Chapter 1 verse 20, chapter 2 verse 20, both phrase it like this: look, O Lord, and consider. That kind of idea. So they are calling out to God. So even in their time of distress, they're still calling out to God. And I love that. In 2 verse 19, It says, pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord and lift up your hands to him. In other words, it's God inviting us into relationship even in times when it's difficult. Like, you can just hear God's heart crying for relationship even though he had to enforce discipline, just like a good parent would to their child. And you can almost hear Jesus' words in Matthew 11 saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Just come. And so maybe you just want to park there today and talk to the Lord and just commit to him. Lord, I am going to be faithful in prayer even when you allow difficulty in my life. Just enjoy those precious thoughts with Jesus and enjoy your day serving him today.